I was 2 minutes into my lunch break when Crystal summoned everyone to the floor. Training session, she announced, as if it wasn't a planned ambush. The large screen flickered to life. My name was at the top of the first slide in bold letters. Zelda's client engagement file, Crystal said with a smirk, or as I prefer to call it, a year's worth of time-wasting personal trivia. I froze, my sandwich still in my hand, only halfway unwrapped. Everyone, all 25 of them, turned to look at me. I didn't make a move. She began clicking through the slides. Birthdays, personal client notes, driver delivery preferences, information I had gathered quietly, off script, sometimes after hours. It was stuff nobody had asked me to track, but it was the stuff that made our clients stay. Crystal continued. "This one is a personal favorite," she said, highlighting a comment I'd made. "Client's daughter recently started chemotherapy. Be gentle on the late fee call." Then she actually laughed. Half the room looked down at their feet. The other half just watched her, completely silent. "You people think this is effective client work?" Crystal asked, her eyes scanning the crowd. "This is emotional hand-holding. Logistics is not therapy." Then she navigated out of the folder. Delete. I swear she hit the key like she was crushing a bug. The screen blinked. Everything vanished. A full year of my work gone in an instant. No need to clutter the shared drive with fluff. Let's focus on real metrics next quarter. Nobody uttered a word, not even the man who had once asked me for help writing a sympathy note to a client whose factory had burned down. I met his gaze. He quickly looked away. Before we go on, a quick note. While you're listening, tell us which country you're watching from. I stood there, my chest tight, my fingers twitching. My mouth was completely dry, but my palms were damp. I felt hot, humiliated, and furious, almost dizzy. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, a number I didn't recognize. I nearly didn't answer it. I almost let it go to voicemail out of pure spite, but something compelled me to swipe. Zelda Winter speaking. "This is Chloe Banner from Forward Loop Logistics. We've been monitoring your client retention work at Tolvex. Do you have a moment to discuss an opportunity?" My brain was still scrambling to catch up. Chloe kept talking. What just happened in there? That was a gift. I have a feeling you know what I'm referring to. She was calm, composed, as if she knew I would take this call before I even did. I stepped toward the glass door of the conference room, nodding even though she couldn't see me. My hands were shaking, but I pushed the door open. "Yes," I said. "I have a moment." And I walked out of that room while Crystal was still talking. I stepped outside, still on the phone with Chloe, and braced myself against the brick wall next to the service alley. My heart was pounding ridiculously like I just escaped something dangerous. She mentioned she would follow up later that afternoon. I simply said, "Okay." Then I ended the call, turned off my phone, and pushed it deep into my coat pocket as if it were a live grenade. I had no idea that conversation would turn my entire life on its head. But if I'm being honest, the real change had started long before that. About 18 months earlier, I had begun at Tolvex Freight Systems as a dispatch associate. In the first week, I almost quit out of pure boredom. It was a relentless cycle of route tracking, ticket logging, and delivery confirmations. You did the same thing over and over and got yelled at for things you had no control over. Crystal was already my supervisor back then. She managed the department like a factory, where if something wasn't in the manual, you didn't do it. You didn't ask questions. You didn't bring it up. I learned quickly. Don't improvise. Just clock in, keep quiet, and clock out. But I started to notice things. Drivers would call in with the same problems. Incorrect warehouse hours, broken equipment, late pickups, and the issues were never resolved. Tickets would go unanswered. The same problems would happen every single week. Some clients would call to say shipments were off or drivers were unprofessional. No one ever followed up. Everyone just assumed the clients would continue to come back. Except they didn't. We lost 2 medium-sized accounts in my second month. No exit interviews, no goodbyes. They were simply gone. Crystal's explanation was they weren't a good fit anyway. I couldn't stop thinking about what they had actually said. The manager from a floral company mentioned that our drivers kept ringing the front bell instead of the side one. That was the issue. It was trivial little stuff, but it was important to them. So I opened a new document on my computer. I didn't tell anyone. I began logging the things the system was built to ignore: recurring complaints, family details drivers mentioned on calls, unusual warehouse instructions, customer quirks, just for my own use, so I could perhaps stop problems before they happened. One driver mentioned his daughter was graduating and asked for a Friday off. The system flagged it as a scheduling conflict, but I remembered it. I reassigned him without a word. He returned on Monday with a box of donuts. Another client mentioned her dog had surgery and she missed a delivery window. In the notes for our next call, I sent a quick, "Hope he's doing okay." She replied with 3 heart emojis. I'm not even a dog person. People thought I was just being chatty. One of the guys in routing called me Dispatcher Oprah. But then something shifted. Clients began asking for me directly. Not every time, but enough. They knew I'd remember if their dock foreman was on vacation. They knew I wouldn't treat them like they were just a tracking number. Crystal picked up on it pretty quickly. "Don't waste time on idle chatter," she snapped one morning. "You are not a therapist." I nodded. I didn't stop. What angered her the most was that I wasn't selling anything. I wasn't cutting rates or offering freebies. I was just actually paying attention. I didn't quit, I just became quieter about it. The more I logged, the more it all made sense. I began checking in on drivers' families, noting small details: a child starting college, a sick pet, a warehouse manager about to retire. It didn't take much, just a sentence or two. It was all adding up to something. One Tuesday, I was sorting through missed delivery confirmations when our oldest ice cream client, Marty Preston, called in. He said his latest order seemed off. He sounded off too, exhausted, a bit disconnected. While we were talking, he let it slip. "My old man passed away last week." That's all he said. Not even a pause afterward. He just kept talking as if he were discussing the weather. After the call, I opened his client file and added a line: "Father passed. Don't press for next week's payment." Then I did something Crystal would have fired me for on the spot. I sent a handwritten card. It just said, "Thinking of you and your family. From Zelda at Tolvex." A month later, Marty signed up for our seasonal express service, a premium rate, no discounts, no pressure. He just signed the contract and said, "I'm glad you're still with the company." That's when I knew I wasn't just guessing anymore. This was actually working. The next major success was the vineyard. Pamela Torres ran a small boutique winery up in Oregon. She was extremely high maintenance. Shipping delays infuriated her more than anything else. She once threatened to switch to a competitor because a pallet of her tasting kits arrived with chipped glasses. We had a difficult month. Badweiler had messed with her route. She sent in a formal complaint. I followed up immediately, explained the delay, and added a quick note that her holiday inventory looked fantastic in her latest online promotion. Nothing over the top. She wrote back, "You actually looked at that?" The following week, she upgraded her shipping plan. More services, 0 negotiation. I wasn't flattering people or offering fake sympathy. I was just making it clear that they weren't being ignored. And it wasn't only the clients. The drivers started changing their preferences too. One driver, Drew, used to argue every time I assigned him the Denver route. He said the client representative there was cold and strangely intense. I called her, listened, and discovered she just hated early morning deliveries because her son had a weekly therapy appointment. We moved her delivery window back by an hour. The next time Drew ran the route, he came back and said, "She actually smiled at me." After that, he started requesting the Denver route on Fridays. They weren't stupid. They knew I was paying attention. Whenever I was covering a route, someone would say, "Hey, check with Zelda. She knows what that guy prefers." Crystal hated it. "This isn't a popularity contest," she snapped one day. "You're not their friend." I just looked at her and said, "No, I'm the reason they're re-signing." She narrowed her eyes. "Stop wasting time on this soft stuff. Stick to the protocols." I didn't argue. I didn't even nod. I just kept logging notes and getting results. She could pretend it didn't make a difference, but the calls kept being directed to my extension. Every call, every driver adjustment, every small note, It all added up.
So, when the annual regional meeting came around, I had a pretty good sense of what was coming. It was a big room with free stale donuts. The CEO, George Langley, was there in his usual ill fitting blazer and a forced smile. I sat near the back with the other dispatchers, sipping burnt coffee and trying not to look too self satisfied. He worked his way through the uninspired slides: fuel efficiency, shipping errors, employee turnover. Then he clicked to the next screen. It was a bright blue chart with a line shooting up at a steep angle. Client satisfaction has increased by 38% across the region, he announced. That's the largest jump we've seen in 6 years. People applauding. Not a full-blown cheer, but a solid round of applause. Langling continued. Retention rates are up. We've had multiple clients upgrade their service tiers, and driver complaints are down. Something is working. My stomach did a strange flutter. It wasn't nerves. It was more like, finally someone was noticing. He never mentioned my name. He didn't need to. Every single person from the dispatch department turned to look right at me, even the ones who used to roll their eyes when I asked them for birthday lists or their clients' pet names. Crystal did not clap. She just sat there with her arms crossed, one foot bouncing furiously under the table. By the time the meeting was over, I could feel her glare tracking me across the room. I barely made it to the break room before she followed me in. Let's have a chat, she said, her teeth clenched. She waited until the door swung shut behind us. You think I don't know what that was about? She hissed. What was what about? I asked, keeping my voice completely flat. She stepped closer. This whole emotional manipulation game you've been playing, it isn't professional, it isn't scalable. You're making this department look unstable. The client seemed to disagree, I replied. Her jaw tightened. She pulled a printed memo from her pocket and slapped it down on the table. You're being reassigned. I want a full year-long analysis of all your client interactions. Every conversation, every note, every driver reroute. Format it for an executive review. I stared at her. That's a punishment. She didn't even blink. It's a performance evaluation. You wanted the attention, now you have it. I picked up the paper and walked out without another word. It took me 3 weeks. I stayed late every night, eating dinner from the vending machines. I dug through everything: call recordings, chat logs, internal memos. I built graphs. I connected client service upgrades to the frequency of my contact. I matched revenue increases to the follow-ups I had sent after complaints. It was 60 pages long, fully indexed. It was proof. When I handed it in, I didn't even feel tired. I felt dangerous. Crystal accepted it from me as if it were a stack of old receipts. She didn't even say, thank you, just, I'll review this. I hope you do, I said. I turned to walk away. She called after me. Just so we're clear, this does not make you irreplaceable. I didn't turn around. I didn't say that it did. And I just kept walking. That was the context for the meeting. The email hit my inbox the next morning. Mandatory training, client communication refresher. She had booked the entire conference room. Everyone from dispatch was required to attend. I knew it wasn't a refresher. I knew exactly what it was. It was the public execution of my work. And that is exactly what happened. She went through my report, slide by slide, mocking my notes, twisting my successes into jokes. Then, with the whole team watching, she moved her mouse over the folder on the shared drive, the one containing my 60-page report, and with a single, deliberate click, she deleted it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I slipped out of the room as if I were going to the restroom. That was when I answered the call from Chloe Banner.
I accepted her offer on the spot. I'll send the contract over right now, Chloe said. PDF with an e-signature. Good. Send it. I hung up and pulled the conference room door back open. Crystal was still up there, droning on about tightening communication protocols, as if she hadn't just metaphorically lit my work on fire 15 minutes earlier. I walked to the front of the room without asking for permission, stepping right in front of the projector beam and facing the team. Quick announcement, I said, loud enough to cut her off. Crystal's mouth snapped shut. I am resigning, I announced, effective immediately. Half the room just blinked. The other half looked like they were waiting for the punchline. Crystal let out a single sharp laugh. That's not how this works. You'll need to. I held up my phone. opened the PDS, and turned the screen toward her. Sign contract. Forward Loop Logistics. Director level. I'm done. She reached for my phone as if she had some authority over it. I pulled it back. I don't require your approval. From the corner of the room, someone stood up. It was George Langley, the CEO. He didn't say a word. He just adjusted his blazer and slipped out of the room, clearly wanting no part of what was about to unfold. Crystal stepped toward me. You can't just leave without going through the proper offboarding process. Watch me, I said. I turned back to the team. For what it's worth, if any of you want to work for a company that actually gives a damn, you know where to find me. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. I walked out, calm as could be, the door swinging shut behind me. By the end of my first week at Forward Loop, I had 3 switchover calls scheduled, and 2 of them were already reviewing contracts. No cold calls, no aggressive marketing, just people who had found me and wanted to follow. Meanwhile, I started hearing stories from my old coworkers still trapped in the beige labyrinth of Tolvex. Crystal was now doing cold outreach herself, using generic templated emails. She'd even added her direct line to her email footer, which used to be a sacred privilege only top-tier clients received. It didn't make a difference. The clients weren't replying. The word was spreading quickly. Forward Loop didn't offer the lowest prices. We didn't do high-pressure sales. But people were talking. They actually listen. That phrase kept appearing in messages, in social media threads, in industry posts. Every time someone called me, they arrived with their loyalty already secured, already sold on the concept before I even said a word. Crystal must have been spiraling, watching names disappear from the Tolvex client list. I hadn't poached a single one. They were all coming on their own. They remembered the birthdays, the tone of voice, the care. All I had to do was pick up the phone. A month later, Tolvex laid off a third of its dispatch staff. Word got out that they had sold off 2 of their regional divisions to a small, Chicago-based firm nobody had ever heard of. As for Crystal, she didn't survive the cuts. Someone sent me a screenshot of her new LinkedIn profile. Consultant, organizational efficiency, available for short-term contracts. There was no mention of Tolvex, no mention of her previous titles, just a tired-looking headshot and a quiet list of inflated accomplishments. The very same day that news circulated, Chloe called me into her office. "We want to make this official," she said, sliding a new contract across the desk. The title at the top read, Managing Partner, Client Division. I signed it before I even sat down. I didn't need to burn anything down. Crystal had done that all by herself, one deleted spreadsheet at a time. Her obsession with rigid protocols blinded her to the most basic truth. People don't stay because you follow the rules. They stay because you make them feel like they matter. The best revenge wasn't revenge at all. I just became too valuable to ignore.